Hey everybody, this video is about the TimeWarp feature of the GoPro Hero7. You can create great hyperlapse videos easily and quickly with it. I will show you which settings to use and give you some important tips on how to get the best results. My name is Werner, I live in the Italian Alps, and this channel is about filmmaking and GoPro. So have fun with this video. A hyperlapse video is a kind of time-lapse where the position of the camera is changing. The camera is usually moved over longer distances. It is crucial that the result is well stabilized. Of course, you can also create a hyperlapse with the help of any other camera, but for good results you should use a tripod or at least a gimbal, and the whole process is relatively time-consuming. GoPro now offers with the TimeWarp feature a possibility to create such a hyperlapse relatively fast and without much effort. Basically, several photos are combined to a video, whereby the camera stabilizes the video in the best possible way. And as we already know, the stabilization is the big strength of the GoPro Hero7. So what should you use this feature for? GoPro recommends the TimeWarp mode, for example for fast and short biking or running videos. But of course you can also create classic hyperlapses of buildings, for example. In any case, with TimeWarp you can add an additional element to your videos and provide more variety. You activate the TimeWarp feature in time-lapse mode. You can make relatively few settings here. You can adjust the resolution and the speed. You can also see the field of view here. However, this is fixed to white, what you cannot change. So there is no linear in TimeWarp mode for now. Even when it comes to resolution, you don't have many options. 4K or 1080 if you want to create a video with the typical aspect ratio of 16:9, or 2.7K or 40:40 if you opt for the narrow 4:3 aspect ratio. For best results, I choose 16:9 and 4K. Why should anyone choose 4:3? 4:3 and for example 2.7K offer a bigger field of view at the top and bottom. However, you get two black bars on the left and right. You can then crop in and move the image up or down. So you have a certain flexibility in selecting the frame. If you shoot in 16:9, you don't have this option. Especially important is the speed setting of the TimeWarp video. You can choose between 2, 5, 10, 15 or 30 times. 2 times means that the TimeWarp video will run at twice the speed. If you record for 30 seconds, you get a TimeWarp video of 15 seconds. If you choose 10 times and record for 30 seconds, you get 3 seconds of video and so on. Apart from the fact that the final video will run faster or slower depending on this decision, creating a different effect, you should also remember that the speed also affects the stabilization. The faster the video, so the higher the speed setting, the more stable the result will look. Especially at the double and fivefold speed, you can still see the up and down movement when walking very well. At a speed of 10 times or more, these movements are no longer so well perceptible. In most cases you will achieve the best results with a setting of 10 times or 15 times. 30 times is especially suitable for longer shots. Also keep in mind that you can increase the speed of your video in post if you want. Apart from the camera settings, I would like to give you 5 general tips for creating a hyperlapse video today. Always keep the camera at the same height to avoid unnecessary up and down movements. If you create a hyperlapse when running or biking, you will achieve this goal anyway by using a mount, such as a chest mount. In other cases, you can use a pole or a hand grip to make it easier for you to maintain an even height. For possible accessories, I put some links in the video description for you. Apart from the constant height, especially for a hyperlapse of a building or other larger objects, you should always keep them in the center of the frame or at the same position of the frame. For example, if you move towards or around the object, make sure your object remains always in the same position of the frame. This will give your hyperlapse video this 3-dimensional effect. The square of the exposure control can also help. For example, you could make sure that your subject stays always in the square. The camera will constantly adjust exposure when creating the hyperlapse video. Think about whether you really want that. If you're walking through a forest with clearings, that might make sense. However, if you're creating a hyperlapse of a building, it might make sense to have a consistent exposure of the building. To achieve this, you can for example select the building on the GoPro screen before shooting and fix the exposure. Of course, this also helps you with the correct exposure and protects against the overexposure of bright areas. You will see a great square on the display. The square can then help you to center your subject. When you create your hyperlapses, you should move toward your target in a straight line or around your subject in a semicircle. You will see that this makes your video appear much more professional and cinematic. Any deviation from the intended line will be perceived as a disturbance. Motion blur always plays an important role when it comes to movement in film. It makes a video look fluid in the first place. You also need motion blur to perceive speed. If you create a hyperlapse with your GoPro, you will miss this motion blur. You also can't create it with the camera because you don't have the appropriate settings for it. However, it is possible to add motion blur to the recording in post. This may not be necessary in every case, but it can greatly enhance many videos. This is especially useful if you want to convey speed. I created 2 titles for Final Cut Pro that you can simply add to your clip to add motion blur to your hyperlapse video. You will see that motion blur actually makes a difference. You can download both titles for free using the link in the video description. All you have to do is to copy the titles to the appropriate folder. If you can, then you should try to add extra movement to your video. For example, moving people, objects, or even better clouds. This gives the hyperlapse video an additional temporal component and will enhance it. Especially the movement of clouds is not easy to capture with the GoPro. You need the right weather and should move extremely slowly and set a high speed on the GoPro. So let's recap. 4K for optimum quality and a typical 16:9 aspect ratio. The higher the speed, the faster your video will run and the more stable it will be. The best results are usually achieved at 10 times or 15 times speed. Be sure to keep the camera at the same height and keep your subject in the center of the frame. Ensure consistent exposure for buildings and objects. Add motion blur to your video, especially if you want to convey speed. Pay attention to additional movement in the image. This gives your video another temporal component. If you have any other tips yourself, please write them in the comments. With this I say goodbye from the Alps. Please support my channel with a like and until next time.